not there with you.
No, I think it's very symbolic because.
But thank you all for attending the crypto capital world, and I understand you have some questions for me, Ilja, or do you want me to just get going?
No, I currently have a ton of questions for you. So first of all, I do appreciate you coming, and I think there's a lot of things we want to learn from you. So saving on time, I'd like to first maybe ask you to collaborate on your pretty bold statement.
You have questions for me, or do you want me to just get going? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me well? Hello? Just a second.
Can you guys hear me?
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for that. So, yeah, so I'd like to start with maybe some comments from you on a pretty bold statement made a couple of days ago that the Bitcoin would reach 250,000 by the year 2022. So what makes you believe it's going to be like so valuable and so big?
Well, like the spirits told me, just the way they told me it was going to be 10,000 in 3 years, about 4 years ago. No, it wasn't just the spirits. I have this. If you do this calculation, okay, there are many different calculations that come together to get me to this point, and those are that there's about $80 trillion worth of crypto. Sorry, let's start over. There's about $80 trillion worth of fiat out there, and my belief is that within 4 years, we are going to be easily using all sorts of sorry, I'm being a little distracted. I've got a new dog here.
Yeah, it's...
Okay, so there are about $80 trillion worth of crypto out there, out of fiat out there, and that 80 trillion, I believe, some percentage of that, maybe 50%, 40, 20% of that will be crypto, and I think Bitcoin will probably have a 25 to 30% market share, and so if you bring those things together, I think you're going to end up coming to about the same conclusion I came to. And I think crypto will actually grow the world market for currency, and so it might even go bigger than that. And I think it'll take about 4 years before we're all paying in crypto. And in about 5 years, I suspect that you're going to be wondering why the barista at Starbucks is laughing at you when you're trying to pay with fiat currency.
So is that the logic that allowed you to predict the 10,000 mark by 2017? Same logic?
No, the logic that predicted the 10,000 mark, yeah, it's similar. But the logic that predicted the 10,000 mark was that Bitcoin would be recognized by the population after that 3-year period, and that all the work the engineers were doing to create trading platforms would be available. So that's what I was thinking then. But the other thing that moves me is literally the spirits, because the Bitcoin and the blockchain are going to potentially transform the world in ways that none of us have ever even imagined, and we have the ability to not just transform banking. I mean, they're going to change venture capital, my own industry, but they're going to transform investment banking, real estate, insurance, and then government is going to change too. I even think that in healthcare, Bitcoin and the blockchain are going to, in some way, have a big effect. this is going to be really one of the most transformative times in the history of our planet. We are really just seeing the beginning of this, and the idea that a machine can create a perfect ledger, and a machine can create a smart contract, that obviates the need for accountants and for lawyers. And then the idea that that this machine might actually be able to identify you individually. By the way, I think that's where the most entrepreneurial attention should go right now, is if you've got a good way of establishing identity. I think that's going to be really valuable in the future.
Right, speaking of identity, as far as I know, you are now officially e-resident of Estonia, right? So apparently we're sitting here in Lithuania.
I'll show you my card.
Oh, can you show back to Tim? Because
here's my residency card.
Right, okay, that's awesome.
I was the third resident of Estonia. You know, you guys, all the various countries of the world are in competition with each other now for the citizens of the world, and at least at the virtual level. I think Estonia has taken it somewhere, but your country can go take it a lot farther. Estonia established a virtual residency, but I think there are some services that governments provide that can be better provided virtually. And if they can be better provided virtually, then the government, it obviates the need for the government to have people doing them. So, for instance, a pension can easily be done just on the blockchain, and it can be trusted, a trusted pension, not something that the politicians can go put their hand in the cookie jar for. And then a medical insurance program can definitely be handled completely on the blockchain. A safety net, like a welfare program, can easily be handled on the blockchain. So you're going to see some interesting services provided by some governments that are beyond the idea of just what Estonia has done. And I think your country can potentially be one of those countries. I know that Malaysia has a virtual citizenship program coming, and I know Kazakhstan's working on one. And I think they're all thinking in terms of taking advantage of this. I mean, small countries have been sort of beaten down by the big countries for a long time. And now there's a new technology that allows them to change all that and grab all of these different services that are just provided, that can be provided virtually. They don't have to be provided through some terrestrial base. And geographic borders are completely collapsing. It's very easy to go from place to place. The only things that hold you up are visas and passports. And I think actually the next step of virtual government is for a government to issue a virtual passport. But visas and passports hold you up. But Skype allows me to reach you, and I think it also will allow people to communicate from wherever they are. And so all of these artificial borders that are created from past physical wars, I think are going to be obsolete. And we have a whole new form of governance. And that's why I say that this Bitcoin and the blockchain are really, you know, they're bigger than the Iron Age. They're bigger than the Industrial Revolution. They're bigger than the Internet Revolution. They're bigger than anything, because they reach everybody on the planet. I can take my Bitcoin and I can cash it in Lithuania. I can move my Bitcoin easily across border. I can. There's no real reason for these artificial borders. It's just some governments have been freer than others, and the freer the country, meaning the less regulation, the less the government officials try to control the population, the richer those countries became. But now I think a big part of government is going to be virtual, and everybody's going to have to compete. And so the playing field's going to be flattened. And I think the first movers here, first government movers, are going to be big beneficiaries. So, yeah, there you have it.
Well,
you have other questions?
Sure, we have a ton of them. So one aspect I just cannot ignore is asking your opinion on ICOs. That's probably #1 topic in the fintech, and Lithuania, Estonia are among leading countries in the world. What's your view on ICOs?
Okay, well, let's start with government regulation on ICOs. It's interesting. In Switzerland, the Swiss had the real tiger by the tail. They had the best. They had the only system for issuing an ICO that was declared legal. And then the Swiss started to add a whole bunch of regulation to it. And people said, well, okay, we can't do it in Switzerland anymore because there are just too many regulations. Let's do it in Singapore. And then Singapore started to add a little bit of regulation, and people said, oh, no, let's go to Cayman, let's go to Gibraltar, let's go to Malta, let's go to Liechtenstein. And so with ICOs, governments are already having to compete because they want the ICOs to happen where they are. I know Puerto Rico is trying to create a crypto center or crypto valley or something. So I think you've got a situation now with ICOs where there are various countries where they're starting to get kind of heavy-handed. China was overly heavy-handed. In fact, when China put those regulations into the Chinese, all the great entrepreneurs from China that were working on ICOs decided that they had to go somewhere else, so they went to the US. Many of them went to Japan because Japan said, oh yes, Bitcoin is a national currency. And then Japan was brilliant because I think actually you're going to see all the great entrepreneurs of the world go to the places that are the freest and the most accepting of ICOs, and I think Japan is definitely going to be one of those. So the ICO world is a great one and has great opportunities. There are going to be some amazing technologies that come from these ICOs, and when you look at ICOs as an investor, you're not investing. You're buying. Think of it as buying. You're buying a currency. It's very different from investing in a stock. If you invest in a stock, that company is for the good of the shareholders, is built for the good of the shareholders. If you donate to a nonprofit or NGO, you're donating to the good of society. So that's kind of owned by society. Well, an ICO is very different. It's like a world transformation. It's like a societal transformation, and it's a way that society can project out what they want their world to be. So think Kickstarter for a societal transformation. It's an opportunity for us to say, yeah, I would like a society like that. I would like a society that that really is better for the ecosystem, or for ecology, or a society that's better to women, or a society that has customers who are very attracted to this way of operating, or a new society that that is proof of stake rather than proof of work. All of these things create these new societies, and so if an ICO is not doing that, I would be very circumspect about buying their currency. If it is doing that, make sure there's a use for the currency after the ICO. Make sure somebody's willing to come in there and buy it, and somebody's willing to go out there and sell it. It's got to have a market. It's got to have a complete cycle, or else you're not going to see network effects. And really, the value of a coin is tied to the people who use it. And I'd argue that the value of a coin is, and this is another little piece that went into my thinking in coming up with 250,000, was the size of a network determines the value of a coin. If you use the Metcalfe's law, you get the size of a network is the square of the number of nodes in that network, and the value of that network is the square of the number of the nodes in that network. And the Bitcoin network is the biggest of all of them by at least twice. And it's easier for a large network to continue to grow at a certain pace than it is for a small one to take off. And so I think that Bitcoin is very well positioned in that way. And as new technologies come along that make it faster or better, whatever, that are faster or better, or like a new ICO comes along and says, oh yeah, you can make this faster by doing, in effect, off-chain transactions and blending them back with a chain. All of a sudden there's the Lightning Network, and it makes Bitcoin much, much faster. So that kind of thing I expect that sort of thing to happen. And then I also expect a few of these ICOs to become enormous, to become things like, I mean, we're big believers in Tezos's vision, and when they get that thing launched, I think that's going to be a real change to the whole system. We're believers in Bancor. We like what they did. Credo, Data Wallet. There are quite a few new coins that are really making a movement. And I think that there's some really interesting things happening there. But right now, I think Bitcoin is very well positioned because it does have the network, and the square of the network keeps growing as the number of wallets increase and the number of activity around Bitcoin increases.
Well, speaking of countries competing for those ICOs, I cannot, again, ignore the US position. So this is your home country, and as far as I know, almost all ICOs are trying to exclude US as a country. So what's your view, US versus rest of the world?
Well, I think the SEC is operating a little bit the way a specialist in medicine operates. If you're a cancer doctor of the knee, everybody's knee looks like it's a cancer. And I think if you're an SEC bureaucrat, everything you see looks like a security or an exchange. I think they're looking at these little, an ICO is started by two guys and a dog, or two girls and a cat. It's just the beginning of something, and the SEC is thinking we have to regulate it like like a security. Well, that's kind of ridiculous because security, when a company goes public with an IPO, they are prepared to spend $5 million a year to just comply with all the regulations the SEC has. To expect two guys and a dog to do the same thing is ludicrous. So somehow the SEC is expecting people to go spend $5–10 million, and they're just a raw startup on legal fees to get going. I think it should just be a one-page document. Just says, yeah, hey, we're an ICO. Here's what we're doing. And get back to us in 2 weeks, and the SEC can get back to them in 2 weeks and says, okay, you know, this one's okay or this one's not. I think all of that, all of the heavy-handedness just helps the lawyers. And the lawyers are just making it fat and happy, right? And I don't think that's healthy. And all these other countries are going, no, come here. We've got a very light touch ICO program and should be easy. You don't even need a lawyer for it. And go ahead and launch. If you want the U.S. investors, though, you have to comply with the SEC. And so that does put a little bit of a damper on the program until the SEC sort of given it their blessing. And I think that the SEC's operated sort of on the fence for a long time, which I think has been okay, but now it's starting to feel like a dark cloud over our heads. And, you know, they've been balancing two things. They've been balancing that they want technology. They want all the technology to stay in the country. They want all the growth. They don't want to put the damper on something that could be bigger than the internet. But at the same time, they want to make sure they're protecting widows and orphans from wasting their money on ICO scams or something. But I think more of people than that. I think actually people have good ways of managing their own money, and I don't think that we have to have the government. In fact, I know that most people will out-manage the government with their own money.
That's a good way of saying that. So let me ask you this question. You're coming from traditional VC perspective. So right now there are a lot of talks that ICO is becoming bigger than VC and it's becoming a primary source of funding new startups companies. Can you compare the two models and strengths, weaknesses, and what's your prediction how your world will roll out next 5 years?
Yeah, it's a little bit, the VC model is tied to the corporate model, which is we invest money for the good of the shareholders. And an ICO is investing or donating money or buying coins that they think will be societal transformation. So they're a little different, and some people feel like they're the same thing. They're not really, because if you're buying a coin, you're not buying the future profits of a company. You're buying what you hope to be a future movement, some sort of a political or a economic global movement. And they're two different things. But yes, I think that ICOs are transforming my industry. I have to be out in front of that. I have to invest in them. Or invest in the companies that will then issue them, sometimes buy coins, because we're always looking for whatever that next big opportunity is, or that business that could be transforming an industry, and a lot of those are still going to be VC, but a lot are also going to be ICO. So yeah, we're being disintermediated. Just as the music industry was disintermediated by Napster and the telecom industry was disintermediated by Skype. We are being disintermediated, and you're going to see the banks disintermediated by Bitcoin. You're going to see insurance companies, the legal profession, the accountants, the government, and healthcare. Healthcare is going to really change because of the blockchain, because we're going to be able to take back our own data, and we're going to put it on the blockchain, and it's going to be very secure there. And we're going to add things like, it won't just be medical records, it'll be things like Fitbit results and what you ate for breakfast and your genetic history and whatever. And you'll put it all there, and then when a doctor asks, you'll say, okay, here, I'll give you this data. And then that data in aggregate will create, in effect, a AI, which ends up being a better doctor. And if that's going to be the case, you're going to have doctors be more consultants to all of the AI that's going on in the cloud, rather than somebody who's put through 12 years of medical school that has just memorized everything. So this is really, it's going to change so many different industries. And yeah, starting with venture capital.
Well, we now, by now, have quite a few questions from the audience, so I'll pick some of them. And in your opinion, what is missing now? What's the next thing we should build in the blockchain, crypto world to make it much better than it is now?
Well, I think identity is missing. I see so many people copying me or trying to be me or whatever. I have no idea why, but anyway, they are.
You're speaking right now.
And then I see people doing all of this identity fraud. And if we get identity nailed, then all these other things, it's amazing how much of the world economy is in effect wasted on trust, on making sure that we all trust each other. And if we've got identity, I think that actually solves a very large portion of trust. And so I think that would be number one. Nail that one. I think anything on the blockchain that can transform government, I am wide open to. I'm looking for companies that can do that right now. And transforming medicine, I'm also looking for companies like that. We've backed a few of those already, but there's still more to come. The financial industry, we've done a lot of the backing of the financial industry transformers. And if you're super creative, maybe there are some others that could do something interesting with financial. Although, from the early stage business, I think that a lot of that has passed, but there will be more. There are going to be more, and then if you've got something that does title for real estate or does new forms of insurance or healthcare for a big transformation, and I like that, but. Here's what I would look at. I'd say any industry where the existing people, the ones who are running a monopoly or oligopoly and providing bad service at a high cost, those are the industries that you have a new technology to go in there and somehow disrupt. And so think about it. Well, where are those industries? Where do they provide the worst service at the highest cost? And people say, oh, cable business or my internet provider or my free providers. But government's the biggest and the least efficient. and the one that's providing the worst service at the highest cost. And so I think there is a real disintermediation there.
Well, you know, there are a couple of questions asking you to tell the story about the 2014 auction with the U.S. Marshal Service. Can you share that?
Oh, sure. That was fun. I knew probably 14 of the 18 bidders, and most of the scuttlebutt at that time was about. Oh, well, I can take you way back. Way back, I have always felt like, since, you know, maybe 2002, I have felt like we needed digital money. And it looks like some light just showed up on me, something from above. So way back when, I was talking to this guy from Korea, and he said, hey, you know, about 40% of the population of Korea plays this massively multiplayer game. I think it was called Legends. And then he said, yeah, and I even use a guy who's my avatar to, I pay him when I have to go to work to be my avatar all day. So in effect, that guy his work life is to be this guy's avatar for the day. And then he said he was going to buy his son a sword for his birthday, and I thought, I thought it was a non sequitur, and then he said, no, it's a virtual sword. It's a sword that is just pixels on the screen. And I thought, whoa, so he's paying real fiat money for a virtual sword. And then it got me thinking that there was going to be virtual money. And so I was always looking for it. So when Bitcoin came along, I jumped. And I was an early, I think I invested in the first real Bitcoin company, CoinLab. And he said he would go do some mining for me. And so, and he said, well, we're going to use your money to buy this ASIC chip so that we can mine faster and get all the Bitcoin sooner. And I said, oh, okay. So it turns out, though, that the ASIC chip that he designed was used by the people who went and manufactured it. They went and used the chip long before they delivered it to CoinLab. So they were mining Bitcoin from when it was about $6 to when it was about $36. But anyway, we got some Bitcoin out of it, and the CoinLab guys stored it at Mt. Gox. And Mt. Gox was the biggest exchange in the world at the time, and then it was disappeared. And I realized then that that was the end of Bitcoin. And then the next day, I thought, well, okay, that's the end of that. But the next day, it only dropped about 10 or 15% in price. And I thought, whoa, people really need this. This is going to be really important. And I started to think about all the potential uses of Bitcoin. And so when the Silk Road auction came, Bitcoin had already had a big run. And the market value was about 618 for Bitcoin, and so I decided that I listened to all of the other people talk about Bitcoin, and I got the sense that they were all thinking that since it was such a large number of Bitcoin, they were going to get a deal, and they were going to bid below market. And so I think I was probably the only one who bid above market for that Bitcoin, and I bid 632. And immediately it went from 632 to 635, and then on a straight down path to about 180. And I looked like the biggest idiot. I had this sense, though, that everybody really needed it, because if Mt. Gox didn't sink it, nothing would. And I knew that there were $80 trillion worth of fiat currency out there that a whole bunch of great engineers were going to go transform. You know, there are a whole bunch of engineers working on crypto right now. There are not a lot of great engineers working on dollars or yen or whatever, euros. Most of the fiat currencies are all sort of fully vetted. And so all the best engineers in the world are working on cryptocurrencies because, hey, they're global, they're decentralized, they're trustworthy, they don't require, and to date, Bitcoin has not been hacked. So, whereas the banks are getting hacked all the time, and they're playing whack-a-mole trying to keep the hackers away. Bitcoin has not been hacked, and knock on wood, I hope that continues. But anyway, so then Bitcoin went through a sort of a tough period, but when it was about 300 was when I made my prediction, and then I made this prediction of 10,000, and it slid right down to 180, and but I had this real belief that it was just going to have, people were going to have to use this. It was going to be a real value item, and so that's what happened.
So speaking of security, I have several questions asking about quantum computing and how it's going to affect the whole safety security issue. You have a view on that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm an investor in a couple of quantum computing companies, and they are making great progress, and they will definitely have the ability to run run a lot of simulations very quickly. So they are going to be incredibly fast on running simulations so that they can test any different, like if they're attacking a password, or they can run a lot of simulations a lot faster than you can with a regular computer today. But at the same time, you're also going to have that same kind of compute power with all the miners protecting the blockchain, or at least the Bitcoin blockchain. And so that makes me feel as though it will just be an ongoing battle between the honest people and the crooks. And I think you're going to, we all might be able to solve this with a really good identity solution. So, so it won't matter who hacks whom, because they're not going to be able to receive the coin without good identity. And so I think that's where it almost doesn't even matter how fast the computers are, because both sides will get the computers. They'll both get faster computers, so they'll be able to sort of fight each other.
Bitcoin versus the other virtual currencies. So many are saying Bitcoin is slow, limited, etc. So Ethereum is better, then something else is better. So Bitcoin versus the rest. What's your prediction on that? I think as I mentioned, Bitcoin I think will probably end up with something like a 20, 25, 30% market share, because other currencies will come up and do extraordinary things, much the way, Microsoft had the pole position and they took good advantage of it. But there were all these others that came along, and then there was Amazon and Netflix and Google. So some great things have happened in a lot of different ways, and I think that's what will happen. I think all of them will sort of point to Bitcoin being a winner. The other cryptocurrencies, though, will be a bigger share than Bitcoin will, because they're all going to have special purposes, and they're going to be, like Ethereum's very good for smart contracts.
Actually, Bitcoin now is good for smart contracts too. The Stellar network's super fast. Well, now the Lightning network on Bitcoin is super fast. So you're going to start seeing some real breakouts, but you're also going to see the Bitcoin engineers being able to bring a lot of that into Bitcoin too. So if I were to predict today, I'd say Bitcoin will be a big winner. Ethereum is the one that actually has big potential, but it also has the most engineers chipping at their heels. I know Tezos is going to be challenging Ethereum. The other ones, it'd be hard to say what some of the other ones are going to be. Bancor may create this marketplace, and we could all create our own coins, and it could end up being a big change. All communication might be run with coins, and that would favor something like Credo. Data is going to be super important. That would favor something like Data Wallet. There's one. There are about 3 that are identity-based, and I don't know which ones of those are going to win. In fact, I don't think any of them will. I think there will be another identity one that comes and changes everything. I think that there are going to be markets that none of us have ever imagined that are going to come up because of different ICOs, and that's going to change the whole dynamics of the Bitcoin ICO business. And it could be, there's Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Gold. Those are also challenging Bitcoin, but I think as they come up with new technologies, Bitcoin will add those too. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be an interesting world. I think we're all going to benefit from it as consumers, and I think that geographic borders are going to fall, and we are going to be much more mobile, and we are, and pretty much any business that's going to be very successful in the future has got to be global.
One last question, coming back to ICOs, that's the name we gave today. Security versus utility tokens. Apparently, utility tokens are widely used, but they don't seem to protect the investor or the buyer of a movement, as you said. Security are heavily regulated. What's your prediction how those two will coexist or split? Like, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think those are they're artificial. It's an artificial division set up by the SEC about 1 million years ago. And I think the SEC has to rethink the whole thing, or maybe the SEC has to back away and just focus on stocks and bonds, and allow some other regulating body to come in and say, here, we're going to regulate ICOs, and we're going to do it with a light touch, and it's going to be a one-page memo and a one-page form that they have to fill out and just make it this way, because no one really knows how valuable this is going to be, and they don't know how much it's going to affect the widows and orphans that they're trying to protect. And I think a light touch government is always better for innovation. And I think the SEC is overstepping, actually. But they're really just filling in where they kind of feel like there's a big gap. And so in some ways, they're just being responsible. But it's a different animal, and they need to, I think the U.S. government should probably start looking at this as a different animal. And it's really such, usually started by so few people. It's just it's completely different. So whether it's a utility token defined as a utility token or a security, that's, by the way, a moving target. So it's not even clear that one of them's a utility and one's a security anymore. So I think you've got, we all have to do some evolving, and we have to go beyond where we have been. We can't rely on laws from the 1930s and 40s. We have to start thinking in terms of, well, what matters now?
Yeah, we have still a ton of questions, but time is up. So just for finalizing the discussion, what do you think is the single biggest thing Lithuania as a country could do to improve on this, crypto-friendliness and improve on that dimension?
Well, I actually think that Lithuania could do a couple of things. One is they have an opportunity, you all have an opportunity to be that virtual government. You have an opportunity to be that light touch virtual government that opens up to the rest of the world. You could have 1 billion virtual Lithuanians. And when you start thinking that way, all these things start happening. People start thinking, whoa, hey, wow, yeah, what other services could we provide to our 1 billion Lithuanian citizens? And I would say citizens because I would you want to leapfrog the Estonians. The Estonians have a virtual residency. Make them virtual citizens. Give them a passport. What's the difference? So a bunch of people come to Lithuania. It'd be great. You guys would have all these young people coming and wanting to start businesses there. And then just be a simple form for an ICO and make and don't rely. I don't know what is the currency that Lithuanians use. Is it euros?
Yeah, the euro. Correct.
Euro. Yeah. Don't be stuck with a euro. I mean, that's kind of tied to the EU anyway. So go use real cryptocurrencies. Make Bitcoin a national currency the way Japan did. There's some obvious things, and you, Lithuanian government, are in competition with all the other governments of the world for me and for all the entrepreneurs of the world and all the businesses of the world and all the money in the world and all the constituents in the world and all the customers of the world. And if you can start thinking of your constituents as your customers, you will end up winning in this new world that is completely decentralized with no borders and completely open.
Well, I think these are great closing comments. So, Tim, once again, thank you for dedicating this time to us. This is very important. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks.